Welcome to the podcast of Task 4 of the A Thousand Splendid Suns project. So, the first question: what parallels do you see between the short story and the trial scene?
Well, to begin with, we can see that in A Thousand Splendid Suns, Mariam had sacrificed herself by telling the judges that she was the one that murdered Rashid. Without any evidence, public hearing, or the help of a legal counsel, the trial was set within a time span of 15 minutes. The obvious reason to why this was so easy for Mariam is because she is a woman. Men easily suspect a woman to do illegal things, therefore, no evidence was required for the trial. This relates to the short story because the story describes a very sexist setting. For example, when Mr. Hale says, "Women are used to worrying over trifles." There are many more sexist comments throughout the story, although the main connection is that the men that are investigating the house immediately blame Mrs. Wright for the death of her husband, even though they have zero evidence of the incident. This is exactly the same in Khaled Hosseini's novel. During both time periods, it was very normal for men to prejudice women and put the blame on anything that is wrong in their life. This is often seen with Rashid when he takes fault with Lila and Mariam.
Yeah, and throughout the story, women were always seen as inferior, and therefore it's super easy for them to blame them, and it shows in the trial scene that it took only 15 minutes for Miriam to for the people to have the right to kill Miriam, which in nowadays is a huge like a lot of evidence is needed to have the right to murder someone for their actions, and in this Afghanistan setting, it only took 15 minutes without any evidence, which just shows how inferior women were viewed as. And then
Another question is, what are the male judges missing in their examination of Mariam?
so in most places these days, judges need a lot of evidence in order to prove someone guilty and in order to have the right to take their life because of it. And this is a little different in A Thousand Splendid Suns. In Mariam's trial, there was no legal counsel, no public hearing, no cross-examining of evidence, no appeals. Mariam even declined the right to a witness because in the back of her mind she always knew that, like a compass, the needle points north. A man's accusing finger always finds a woman. This is an extremely important quote from Nana, Mariam's mom, who has taught her a lot in her life, and this quote represents pretty much how male characters in A Thousand Splendid Suns acted, and how they found women so inferior and so worthless almost. And a lot of evidence and information was missing in order to prove and get the right to kill Mariam. But since she was a woman, they proceeded with the trial and took her life, just like it was no one, like she was worthless.
It is also very important to notice that this wouldn't have had happened to a man. So the main idea here is that the judges and the parallels between the short story and the trial scene is that this happens to women because they are usually misvalued and treated as less than men in societies such as the one that we can see in the novel
Yeah,
that takes place in Afghanistan during the Taliban regime.
yeah. Just like a man, for example, if Rashid had killed Mariam, if it was vice versa, no way, without any evidence, well, no way would Rashid be killed anyway. The death of a woman it's so much less important and less
That it probably wouldn't
less
even
significant that probably Rashid wouldn't even have had to go to trial because of it.
nobody probably wouldn't even have noticed it.
Uh-huh. Because they were just so women were so insignificant in that time period that like um that like that doesn't even matter to many men and to many people. And yeah, same with, well, although, well, in a jury of her peers, Mr. Wright was killed, and it showed that a lot more attention. No, Mr. Wright was killed, and a lot of attention was given to the death. The four people came to inspect the house, and that just shows how they were so eager to find out who killed the man, which is similar to the story, similar to A Thousand Splendid Suns. They want to know who killed the man, and they want to punish them. Although if, for example, Mrs. Wright was killed instead of Mr. Wright, there would be a lot less of a punishment and an effort to seek and find out who was the murderer.
comes to the comparison between Mrs. Wright's and Miriam's case, don't you believe that Miriam was treated in a more radical way?
I mean, for sure. Although, like in the short story, it doesn't like necessarily specify like how bad women were treated, but it's still like Mariam's way, and like just that whole Afghani setting. Like women were so harshly like abused, both mentally and verbally. Like I doubt it would get any worse in like the U.S. Like in Mariam's case, she was like beat and like verbally assaulted every single day by like Rashid, and Rashid in the story is portrayed as like a normal, a common Afghan man, and like imagine this happening to like millions of other women around like that area. So like I doubt it would get any worse in Mrs. Wright's case, although there's definitely like a similarity between like how the cases were treated and how like, as Nana says, how the finger always points to a woman. So I feel like, yeah, it's definitely way more of a radical way in Miriam's case. And like, although we're saying that this is something super extreme and something super radical, don't you think it like still kind of happens today? Like maybe not to that extent, but like there's definitely still some like a lot of inferiority of women.
Of course, yes, I agree with your points, and yes, to answer your question, of course, I do believe that women are given less rights than men. I mean, it can be proven with tons of evidence, and like there are tons of feminists protesting against this for a reason, and it's because they're given less rights. Like there are a whole lot of statistics, for example, like the one that said that women earn 0.71 cents for every dollar that men earn, and of course, like every time a woman is considered for a job, they're like way less likely to get accepted than men. And I believe that this is like in a way a modern style of how women were misvalued compared to the Afghan situation with Miriam. However, I do believe that it is getting better in some way. I believe that women are starting to given more equal rights, and I do believe that this is going in a positive way.
I mean, I don't know if I'm fully agreed with that. Like Mexico, like I mean, I'm not from Mexico, but Mexico has like they still have like not many women in Mexico work like, and that's super common, and I don't like that's in my opinion that's kind of like a stubborn way of like oh no, women shouldn't work, let's let the man work. Like that hasn't really changed, and that belief like in that hasn't really changed much. So like I mean, it definitely is progressing in some parts of the world, in some parts it isn't. And I did like your point where you said that like it's a new way of showing like women inferiority. Like during that time, like women were just verbally assaulted without like people thinking of it as like something bad. And although now it's more of like a discreet way, because people know like have some more like of moral values than they had during that time, I believe. And so like now it's more of like a discreet and like indirect way of like making women feel more like inferior. For example, like not what you said, like not considering them as much for job interviews, or like there's many other cases, and I do really agree with that point.
Going back to what you said about the women not working and being like less proactive than men, I do believe that this goes on. However, I believe that it has now moved on to a social norm instead of like general like culture in society. Because in Miriam's case, like the Taliban literally prevented and like executed laws against like women working and women receiving education.
But what does it matter if it's a social norm or like it's still just making women more inferior for them like not working. Like I bet many women in Mexico would love to work and have like a job like many men do here, although they don't. And like I feel like it being a social norm doesn't justify it. That's what I believe. But go on.
Like going back to your point where you said like that many women in Mexico would love to work, but they don't. I believe that many like women in Mexico or other places in the world, like probably most places, if they really wanted to work, this is my personal opinion. I can't prove it, but I believe that they can if they really want to, because in Miriam's case, like she literally couldn't work. But now, even though it may be harder for them than men, there are many more opportunities, and if they put their mind to it and really want to find a job, it's like very probable that they will.
I know, but like it, although like if they would really want to work, like they would still like have less of an opportunity, less of like a chance of like reaching the position they want to than if they were a man. So I mean, yeah, you're right though. Like in the Netherlands, for example, like I feel like it has like it's a lot more equal than it is here. Like